Great morning, humans. Great morning, world. This is your boy, Dr. JC Doornick, aka otherwise known as the Dragon. And just so blessed and honored to be here with you today for what we call Make Sense Mondays. This is the live portion of our podcast. It happens every Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern. It's part of the Make Sense with Dr. JC Doornick podcast. If you've been following along, if not, you can find that on all platforms. And I just love the idea of taking Mondays and make it a fun day and waking up and with the help of this conversation, just getting your focus and reclaiming it from what was going to boot up normally. So that's what Makes Sense Mondays is about. It's about reclaiming control as the dominant force in your life with a conversation that is focused around a topic that sits in a category of the things that make you go, So for those of you that are tuning in live, I say great morning to you, because why would we say good morning when we could say great? So that's the good to great concept. So great morning, everyone. I've got a great one for you today. This is going to be a very, very ironic and interesting twist on personal growth and self-development. And the reason why it'll come at you as a twist and kind of like just a unique way of looking at things is, first of all, that's the whole premise of my work, is recognizing that it's who you are that determines how well what you do works, which focuses your attention on, well, then who am I? Am I the right person for the job that I'm going after right now? But then it also recognizes something that everybody kind of is unified around, and that is that, our perceptions control our reality, and our perceptions are created by our perspectives, our life experience, and our programming and such. And if that's true, and I think everybody can find that truth, if they're just not looking for truth today, then they won't. But if our perspectives control our perceptions and our perceptions control our reality, then this idea that I always heard Wayne Dyer talk about, that if you change the way you look at things, or when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at begin to change. So if you're interested at this juncture in changing the way things are unfolding in your life, the precursor before that would be to first at least allow yourself, and that's what this show is all about, to look at things differently. And how do we look at things differently? We don't have to let go of what we think and our statements and our core values and all of that, but we just allow ourselves to just take a look around things and see them from different vantage points, maybe even the one of the person that we're looking at. And if you learn how to do that, well, then the things that you look at change. And that might be a frightening thing for you. You might not want things in your life to change. It might be scary. A lot of people are afraid of change. However, if you look at your current reality right now and you're dissatisfied with the outcome, if things are not moving in the direction that you want, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling confused, that means that the way that your life is unfolding is not really what you hoped for. So that would be a reason to tune in. That would be a reason to listen to the podcast, the Make Sense with Dr. JC Doornick podcast. And if you're interested and willing to do the work in a really, really fun way, then you'd want to consider joining what we call the Make Sense Academy, which is our private community. And I see some of our amazing members joining now. Great morning, Vicky. Great morning, Lori. Great morning, Kathy. And great morning to anybody else that's watching this right now. But our Make Sense Academy, at the very, very base and core, is just this psychological safe haven where I basically transfer everything that I've learned, all my work, and I teach a system called the interface response system, and all of our coursework, everything in there. And now it's evolving as well into providing what's called the Make Sense Business Academy. And that's where all of the tools that you'll need to take these new concepts, new ways of looking at things, these new perspectives, and new levels of consciousness, and actually put them into play, turn your passion into your paycheck and things like that. So Lot of stuff in there, and it's like 48 bucks a month instead of hiring a life coach and somebody like that. In fact, our members are doing more work on themselves than they would if they had a one-on-one coach because they not only have the one-on-one interaction, but they also have the interaction with one another. Great morning, Deb. Good to see you guys. Okay, so this one has some meat to it, so I'm gonna jump right in. So today's Rise Up on our Make Sense Mondays edition, our live show, which is really exciting because I could make a mistake and you'd be able to see it. But I call this thinking inside the box or think inside the box. And I don't know how that strikes you right away, but it should be like, wait a second, I thought we were supposed to think outside the box. Exactly. So let's look at a different perspective here, a different way of looking at things. So here's where this came about. I was leading a special mastermind this past weekend for a large group of people in another realm. And I am who I am. I'm Dr. JC. Everybody calls me Dragon, but I very often speak in other platforms, sharing some of this stuff. And these people in particular of this group have been to or are about to, but most of them had experienced some sort of plant medicine ceremony and or retreat in places like the Amazon jungle, the Sacred Valley of Peru, where Machu Picchu is, as well as in just amazing places in the Yucatan jungles of Mexico. So many of these people I know personally, right? Because I've done a lot of that work myself, but this is a mastermind that's free and it's open to everybody. And it's associated with this organization that I'm aligned with, and that's called the Arcana Spiritual Center, part of Arcana International. I'll put that information in the description. But anyway, these are very unique people. These are people that have experienced what you experience in these just unbelievable breakthrough experiences that you have with plant medicine. And, when I say plant medicine, I'm talking about things like ayahuasca. I'm talking about, peyote and San Pedro and, the bufo frog and all of that stuff. So these individuals had all experienced an extraordinary expansion of their minds. And they all tapped into a different higher level of consciousness. And perhaps you could even call it a higher frequency, a place that they had never seen before. And they did that by doing this work, whether they called it a good time or a bad time, they all were exposed to something else, a higher level of consciousness. So some refer to that place in the plant medicine realm, as a world within the world. If you think about that, it's like they're discovering that there's something else other than what they, thought. So that's the whole premise of this show, right? Maybe there's something else going on. Do you ever feel like there's got to be more to life than this? Well, what I can tell you for sure is that there is, but you would have to become open and curious to changing the way you look at things. But anyway, the premise of this mastermind that I'm leading is something that I'm very passionate about, and it's to eradicate or eliminate the jacuzzi experience syndrome, where people go and they have an amazing experience, but nothing changes in their life, which is what I would hope for you in this Make Sense Monday, or if you're in our community. I don't think that there's any value in just knowing something that you learn and not applying it. I think that a lot of people create this illusion that they've changed just because they know something. That's the beginning of change. So to avoid the typical jacuzzi experience, that most people have on these trips, what we're doing is we're having these integration masterminds. So the word integration is an interesting word, and I'll share with you a little bit more about what that means. But that's the premise of this mastermind that I've just laid out with potentially a little too much description, right? So Arcana International, and I'm aligned with them, so they've asked me to help, provides its guests, with an extraordinary, unique experience to protect them from having a jacuzzi experience. And basically, it's a full spectrum integration process that begins before the trip, right? So it begins before the trip. They have like a briefing process. And then the integration process, which is something that normally happens after you learn something. You have to integrate it into your life, into all of these things. But basically, they do something before, during, and then after. So these monthly masterminds that I'm referring to, and the reason why I'm sharing this is not in case you want to do plant medicine, but anytime you have a breakthrough, even if you're having a breakthrough with something I say today, if you don't put it into play, it's not going to stay. It's not going to impact your life. One of my favorite quotes is that learning is just another form of distraction in the absence of action. Right? Great morning, Diane. So these monthly masterminds even offer one-on-one coaching after and things like that. Not like I said, I'll put the link if you want to tap in if you're open and curious to that stuff. But to add some color to this, let's talk about what integration means. That's an important part of this rise up today. The definition of integration that we've all been taught. Remember, a lot of times when you look at words like we're going to look at this idea, we have to look at how we've been taught to think it is, but then if we change the way we look at it, we might see it might mean something else in a different walk of life. So we've all been taught throughout our life that integration is a process that occurs when separate people or things are brought together, right? Integrated together. Separate people or things are brought together. So similar to the integration of students from all districts in elementary schools. Like my daughter just went to a middle school last year and now she's in high school. So they've integrated all the middle school students into a high school, right? You follow me? Or even the integration of snowboarding on ski slopes. I'm a skier, so I remember that. That was a tough time for me when, when all of a sudden they're like, by the way, there's going to be snowboarders here. And we started to have issues with each other and things. So you may know the word differentiate, right? So this is, the idea of differentiating means setting apart. So integrate is the opposite of differentiate. You follow me? So naturally, if you think about this poses a key challenge for these guests that are on this trip because they're wired to look at integration that way. And this is what I always talk about, this idea that we're programmed to look at and respond to things in a certain way. So even if you go on one of these fantastical trips, you're programmed when they say, okay, it's time to integrate this stuff into your life. So they're naturally going to assume that the integration process is one where they are to take this new level of consciousness. This is the key, this new level of consciousness and extraordinary new frequency. When you have a breakthrough, you could be like at a Tony Robbins thing, say, oh my God, I have this breakthrough. And very often the reason why it doesn't turn into something is because you very often don't know how to turn it into something because you're wired to think things like integration means something. And I'll explain that. So they're naturally going to assume that it's to take this new consciousness, this new level of frequency that they're tapped into and somehow bring it together with the world that they live in back home. Right. So just imagine you learn something today and you try to take that something and integrate it into your unintegrated world where people have not decided or decided to be open to learning something like that. It's very hard to take something and integrate it into the world. So this is kind of where the thinking inside the box concept came from. So, you know, our integration process is unique as in the walk of life that in our community and things like that. It's unique because we address this challenge. That's the difference between the jacuzzi experience and a pivotal experience, is identifying before you make a decision to do something, the inherent challenge in it. If you identify the challenge, the hard work, and the crux of what you're trying to do, and then decide to do it, that's a full commitment. But if you don't acknowledge the challenge and you decide to do something, I'm going to go integrate this information into my home life, but you don't know about that challenge. When the challenge comes, it will create the illusion that, oh, I didn't know about that. Maybe this is not the right time. So if you find yourself every now and then saying, this is not the right time, maybe I wasn't cut out for this, it's probably because you didn't think it through and recognize that the path from where you are right now on any level to where you want to go is going to be riddled with challenges. And if you don't know about those challenges, there's a very good chance that you might think those challenges were unique to you and then you start to excuse yourself from things, which is what excuses are. So in any case, we've all been taught, these things don't work, and in this instance, we remind them that the world that they live in outside in this meeting, we're talking about this new frequency that they've got. We remind them that the world outside that they think they have to integrate this information into is unintegrated. And what I mean by that is the world at home is filled with people, and this doesn't make them bad. But remember, when you choose to go level up, the people that you hang out with at home have not. So it's not a matter of, it's very hard to teach other people that have not volunteered to learn like you. So the world back home is filled with people that are still operating under the assumption that they are separate and unique from one another. But if you level up to a higher frequency and you start entertaining, well, you know what? If you strip us all down to the core, we're all the same. We're all one. And you start thinking like that, which is a great way to think, especially if you want to change the way you look at things and see things change. But the people back home still think that they're separate and unique, and they're unconsciously walking around with their egoic structure. You know, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. And typically it's such a challenge that it'll just force you to kind of say, you know what, maybe I'll do it some other time. So it's a world full of people that are unconsciously needing to protect their beliefs in religion. Look around at this. This is fascinating. And I've been like this too. And when I was like this, I didn't know I was like this. That's what's so fascinating about unconscious behavior. But it's just filled with people that have this need to protect their beliefs on religion, politics, what good is versus evil. You can see it everywhere. Social media is just perpetuating and supporting. I heard someone the other day, they were talking about the political debate, and then they said, oh, on the news channel, they were all saying that he won or she won or whatever. And I'm just saying, well, what news channel are you reading, right? So in any case, Diane says, but we cannot change others, only ourselves. Yeah, I mean, changing yourself is tough enough. Right? So if you want to go change somebody else, you might as well also try to, teach a goldfish to climb a tree or try to build an airplane in the sky. And what they do is they're protecting their beliefs and their concepts and their opinions and statements that carry exclamation points back. When you say something and put an exclamation point behind it, rather than take the power move and put a question mark behind it and challenge it. But when you have an exclamation point behind something, you're afraid of that being wrong, which is why you protect your beliefs. If that's resonating with somebody right now, that's the kind of work that we do in the Make Sense Academy. So there's these amazing humans, these people that have just leveled up. And they've had this experience that's, taken their whole house of cards down. When you go and have like some sort of a pivotal experience in life, sometimes it's like a near-death experience or anything, or working with plant medicine, which is similar. It takes your whole house of cards down, meaning your whole system of belief. When that gets taken down, it's a very scary moment for you, but it's also the launch pad for massive, massive growth. That's why you hear these people that go on these trips, they come back and they're like, oh my God, my whole life changed. That's what drew me to it. Realizing that nearly everything, this is what happens when your cards fall down, realizing that nearly everything, I would even say everything that you were taught and programmed to know just isn't true, or even just might not be true. When you realize that, woof, and if you're listening to this right now and you're saying this guy's lost his mind, I just want to offer you the insight that that's how powerful your ego is, that it won't even allow you to entertain an idea. And I get it. I spent most of my life protecting myself. So acknowledging things, these people are not acknowledging things that, like, all humans are interconnected, right? That there's all of these things like politics and ideas and everything. Those are just our bodies deciding to do that, and our egos and things. But we're all just souls that come from the same source that many say is just love, energy and love. So only playing the roles, this is what you see out there. Everybody's playing the roles, wearing the masks that represent what they were taught by their mother, father, teacher, preacher, society, and what we consume all day, and then what evolution has paid forward. So we're just running this program that we've been taught without knowing it. So it's very easy for people to just assume that they're right. But these people just tapped into something new, like you might be, that's making them go, interesting, right? So this magical thing, has been uncovered. It's like a magical breakthrough. And what my breakthrough was, that I wanted to share with you today is that I just made a distinction that I think we've been looking in the wrong place for our growth. And it's not our fault because I think we're just looking where we were taught to look. And I think that this is going to be maybe a cool take home. So this is what I want to share. My audience that follows me in the Make Sense Academy and the Make Sense Business Academy is pretty much done, within even if you're watching me right now, it's done within an environment full of people that are actually allowing themselves to be open and curious to new information. I don't know how you look at that, but that's a powerful person that is allowing themselves to question and challenge things, even your core beliefs. That's a powerful person that's going to change the world. So that's the environment that we have. So if you're like, I'm not changing nothing, then Make Sense Academy is not for you. So they may not be ready now or ever to travel to the jungles of Peru and things like that. That's not something that we're promoting. I was just sharing my own experience, to be transported to another realm. But they are just as special as those people because they're taking on a challenge that's very, very unique. And that is the challenge of allowing themselves to say, I haven't made up my mind about anything yet. What have you made up your mind about? That's an interesting thing to unpack because that's something that you are just 100% buying into as the truth. And that's tough. That's a tough place to be because if you ever find out or meet somebody that doesn't have the same belief as you, enemy, right? And then you'll just get caught up and distracted by protecting your position. So as they have recognized that the program, right? That's the people that I walk around. This program that has been programmed into us is running inside. This is the program that started with our formative years where we just believed everything that we were taught by our MFTPSE. It's running inside of them and they're recognizing, this is the awakening. They're recognizing that they didn't create the program. It was created by others. So that's a big step right there. And this is where I either lose people or they come along with curiosity. So they understand this stuff, my audience. And you might be ready to understand this stuff. And if you want to do the work, come on. So this magical breakthrough that I made that I want to offer you to just chew on, right? You could always spit it out, but chew on or even unpack is this idea that we were taught in our programming. We were taught that growth takes place where? I mean, I could say this to anybody, even a teenager. Say, where does growth take place? And your natural answer, you can put it in the comments if you like, if you're watching the live, but most probably you're going to say it takes place outside the comfort zone. I mean, how many personal growth books have been written about that? They show the circle that says comfort zone, and then there's an arrow out that says where growth takes place. So that's what we've been taught. So this is based on the idea that growth requires uncomfortable stress and challenges to actually manifest. Just like a muscle, I wrote, we must tear the muscle down in an uncomfortable, painful way to facilitate the rebuilding and growth. So that's where that premise comes from. And it makes sense in many, many levels, right? Yeah, in the suck, right? We usually run from the suck, but if you really learn about personal growth, they say move towards the suck. The obstacle is the way. But this is where we've come up with this idea that growth takes place outside the comfort zone, outside the box. Makes sense, right? So if I want to create something that has not yet ever existed, right? Like look at some of the greatest inventions ever, like electricity or something like that. If I want to create something that has never existed, I can't do this using the same way of looking at things. That's the idea of thinking outside the box. So I get it. I've spent most of my life doing that. We're going to look at something else today. So I must think outside the box to uncover something. This is what we're taught: uncover something that was missed. So this is really interesting. This is why I always say, let's turn over some new stones that we've never looked under along our path of comfort. Okay. So that's the idea of stepping outside the box. You know, here's some things that you might recognize: the iPhone, electricity, as well as theorems like quantum physics. Those things didn't used to exist. And the first time somebody came up with some of these things, people thought they were nuts. I mean, do you know what it must have been like back in the day that we used to listen to like cassette tapes? That we were going to have this little thing that fit in our pocket that could hold like thousands and thousands of songs, and it would be you'd be able to communicate, through some sort of thing called the internet and all that stuff. All those things started off as stupid ideas that the population considered crazy and a waste of time. So that's the idea of thinking outside the box. So there's value to that. Then these things went on to change the world forever. So we're getting a little bit used to and comfortable with this idea that we have to get uncomfortable. So this idea of thinking outside the box has become well accepted and is now a mainstream strategy that is all over personal growth and self-development. You got to get uncomfortable. I always tell people, fail today, get uncomfortable. And it's actually a strategy to create growth, leverage and create growth and success in many realms of business and personal growth, like I said. However, it also carries what I call in our community a double-edged sword, meaning there's two sides of it. It could be a good thing, but it could also be the actual reason that you're struggling. I love when I fumble words in the live format. I love cleaning it up later, but also I love just the authenticity of being real. It's so therapeutic to do live shows, by the way. I highly recommend it. So, however, this idea also carries a double-edged sword with it, as it has created a reality where human beings are always looking for growth. Where we're always looking for growth in the same place and success, and that is outside the box, and have this perception that all things that we want, desire, need, and must have exist somewhere else. That's the key. That we have this idea that if I want something and desire something, it exists somewhere else other than here. The reason why that's a double-edged sword is it causes them to always strive for more, and that is outside of themselves, outside of their current reality. Now, I speak a lot about this, all the while that you're doing that. And you can see people, and I've been that person, that are 100% driven and always looking to growth, never ever saying, hey, I've arrived or anything like that. They're always looking to move forward, almost in an obsessive way. In fact, obsessive, strategies are very good to leverage growth. But they're doing all of this stuff outside of themselves, all the while unconscious to what already is. That's the double-edged sword. And if you allow yourself to start living in the present moment, you might see that there is a beautifully wrapped present or box that's been waiting for you to open. Failing to celebrate when you're always in the future, failing to celebrate the present moment and all the magical things that already exist. And I've spoken about this before, but St. John's of the Cross refers to that scenario as the dark night of the soul, where the never satisfied soul that's always in the future spends their whole life striving for more, right? And never stops to celebrate what they have already achieved. So it's an interesting thought right now to look at yourself right now in this day, in this present moment, and recognize that a lot of things that you've strived to accomplish, you already have. But did you ever stop and really, truly celebrate them, or did you move on? I always say, if you want to be a millionaire, the moment you become a millionaire, you'll notice that 2 to 3 minutes later, you'll say, what about 2 million? Right? Rather than enjoying the million. So I want to offer you a new, extremely outside of the box, an extremely uncomfortable breakthrough that might be what you need to start living your dream life. Right? I believe that everything that we need is already there. We don't have to go out looking for it. Sometimes we just didn't look in the right place. And if you acknowledge this idea of growth being something that takes place outside the comfort zone, well, this is going to be the most uncomfortable concept that you've ever had. And here it is. Rather, this is something you can play with today. Rather than seeking out the holy grail of success outside of yourself, outside of your box, I'm going to challenge you today to look inside your box. And this is the concept of this whole idea is thinking inside the box, looking inside the box. Do you realize, and this is the way I look at it, that you are the wrapped present under the Christmas tree? You know, when you go down to the Christmas tree, if you ever celebrate Christmas and there's that big present with a beautiful bow, and that's you, right? That's your box. You are the wrap present under the Christmas tree. And this is why they probably refer to this time right now as the present, right? We've heard that before. So, my challenge for you today is to just unwrap the present. Unwrap the present that is just sitting under the tree for, in some cases, 53 years, right? And it's just like, why is this dude never unwrapping this present? Because everything he's looking for is in it already. You know, I mean, if you strip away everything that the ego desires and you allow yourself to remove all of these restrictions and desires that the ego has, what is going to be left over? That which already is, and that is you. And you're going to have to unwrap the box to do that. And all I'm thinking is you are way, way more amazing than you probably know. A lot of people try to validate their amazingness by always striving for more. They want to be viewed as somebody that is always hustling, always striving for more. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. I still do that. But I want you to know that what's in that box, your box, is so much cooler than you think it is. And have an amazing opportunity today, right here in this moment. If you take this jacuzzi idea, I see people saying, this is amazing. I love this idea. I'm going to take notes down. But if you don't put it into play, it's not going to stay. It's going to drift away. Your ego is going to stomp this out immediately because it's going to threaten what it is that you have exclamation points behind. You're going to have to do this in some sort of a way. And because you have this amazing opportunity to look inward rather than outward for all you seek and desire. So that is today's Rise Up. And I love and appreciate you all. And I wish you all a beautiful day. And if you are interested in more of this conversation and just really stepping into your power and your genius as the dominant force and shot caller and creator of your book, your canvas, you know, there's so much more out there when you start looking inside. But there's a timing component to that, isn't there? So if you're looking for the coaching, the mentorship, the collaboration, the networking with others, and all of the tools to do things like start a podcast, write a book and publish it and monetize it, start a public speaking career, get healthy, whatever it is that you have designated as your urgent thing that you need right now, that's all being done in the Make Sense Academy, and we'd love to have you there. So have a wonderful day. And if you learned something today, put it into play. That's how it's going to stay. Bye-bye now.